Hello, and thanks for tuning into our program, The Evolving Drug-Free Workplace. I'm your host, Stan Rhodes. Well, there is no denial, drugs in the workplace can be a big problem. Impaired workers can cause safety concerns and an assortment of other problems, possibly impacting the bottom line. As some attitudes have changed through time about the use of certain substances, there are questions that remain about how to keep our workplaces safe and drug-free. Well, joining me on this program to discuss this topic are two experts who have lots of experience with drug-free workplaces. First, Neil Fourtner is the chief toxicologist of Alere AV Laboratories. He is also the chairman of the Drug and Alcohol Testing Industry Association, known as DAISHA, and has almost 3 decades of experience in the areas of forensic and clinical toxicology. And John Romeo is the director of employment and labor law for the Gibbons Law Firm in Philadelphia. He has also worked as an in-house attorney and ethics and compliance officer for a major corporation. Well, gentlemen, welcome to both of you. What exactly are we talking about? What is a drug-free workplace?
From my perspective, it's about creating the right culture in the workplace. There's so many potential problems from a reputational standpoint, safety and a risk for your employees. On the downside and on the upside, there is a lot of opportunity with employee morale and productivity and absenteeism increases for employees to have a better place of work. So I think it's a real tool for employers to improve the workplace and to improve their productivity.
Neil, where did this all begin and why did it begin?
Well, if you look at the history of drug testing in the U.S., it's been going on for a long time. It really started back with the military and Department of Defense. There was a major accident on an aircraft carrier. Many lives were lost. Subsequent testing showed a fairly high positive rate of the crew. And so that's when the Department of Defense mandated testing of all military and civilian personnel. After that evolved an executive order by former President Reagan to establish the federal drug-free workplace programs.
So he saw that there is possibility of having a positive benefits for having this. What other benefits are there, John?
Well, I think the benefits, they don't end really. I mean, employees complain about other employees that bring down the workplace because of drug or alcohol problems. So employee morale goes up, absenteeism goes down, productivity goes up. You can control your risks. And importantly, for a lot of employers, it's a compliance issue to comply with various federal statutes that would require testing in the workplace, depending on your industry.
Is there a legal issue here?
There's a lot of legal issues here. There's issues under the Americans with Disabilities Act. There's potential issues under OSHA. There's potential issues under the Department of Transportation guidelines. So employers really need to get through all the wave of potential laws that could impact their drug-free workplace program. And now with the potential legalization of marijuana in several states, that creates a whole new genre of issues for employers to deal with.
Well, we'll get into that a little bit more. But what industries are maintaining a drug-free workplace? I mean, are there certain industries that are required to maintain this?
Well, if you look at the federal program, it was really the foundation, and many of the private sector has now adopted those guidelines. It is designed at safety-sensitive positions. Today's world,
so safety is the key.
Safety is the driving force. Department of Transportation is probably the largest federal entity doing testing, and they're doing over 8 million samples a year just within that agency. But now it covers everything that moves air, sea, water, land, mechanics, the airline pilots, the flight attendants, very encompassing.
So both large and small businesses.
Yeah, with my clients, I find it's much easier to put it out in a larger business. You have the resources at your fingertips. With a smaller business, it becomes more difficult to manage and maintain. But I find more and more smaller businesses, as it grows, are starting to implement a drug-free program. And it's cost efficient. You can do it in a reasonable way that will not break the bank.
Is alcohol considered a drug when it comes to this, a drug-free workplace?
Well, it's an interesting question because a lot of times I ask people, what is the most abused drug in the United States? And they'll tell you, well, it's cocaine, or it's methamphetamine, or it's marijuana, when actually it's alcohol.
Alcohol, by a large percentage?
Yes, a very significant percentage. I mean, it's the #1 drug involved in almost all driver fatalities.
And therein creates a problem because I mentioned the Americans with Disabilities Act earlier, and they treat alcohol under that act very different than illegal drugs. So employers need to be really careful when putting their program forward. Alcoholism is a protected disability under the Americans with Disabilities Act. And there are certain times where you can test for illegal drugs like pre-offer during the interview stage that you can't even test for alcohol at that stage. You would have to wait to a later stage in the application process to test for alcohol.
So I understand this. We're talking about large and small businesses. Are we talking full-time employees as well as part-time, seasonal?
I advise my clients all. I mean, it should apply across the board with your workforce. If they're in a position where they could impact your reputation, your business, your product, then they should be tested.
Does a drug-free workplace have to include testing?
Have to legally? No, unless you fall within the Department of Transportation mandated testing program, then testing is mandated. But if you're not within that and you're just voluntarily putting a program together, you don't have to include it. I advise my clients to include it because it doesn't have any real teeth without the testing, in my opinion.
You need to have it to have weight before you can do any kind of testing on a person, an employee?
There are certain states that would require it. Now, everything that we talk about, a lot of these laws are state by state, so you need to be careful. But to have in certain states, you would have to have a written policy before you could go out and do the testing. So I would recommend that everybody does that. Plus, a big thing for me is this isn't a gotcha mentality. We're not trying to have somebody use drugs and catch them. We're trying to educate so that they don't use them in the first place. So have the policy, educate your people.
Right. Neil, when do most companies do a test, and what kind of tests are given?
Well, I think across the board, the most common testing is pre-employment or pre-offer testing.
So a person comes in and fills out an application.
They're an applicant. They'll go through an interview. At one point, everyone got tested. Most companies now wait until they get down to making an offer, and then that offer is contingent upon them passing a drug test, for the final hire. There are certainly many companies that do probable cause, reasonable suspicion, post-accident testing, and much, much fewer that actually do random testing of their employees.
What about those who are already employed?
Usually if they're under the Department of Transportation, and that is the one federal program that has a random component to it. So all covered employees, 50% of them in a given year have to be tested randomly. And 25% of that group are also tested for drugs and alcohol.
And so it's just drugs, alcohol, anything else?
No, the federal program is a little bit more restrictive in terms of what drugs you can currently test for, because they have a standard panel, if you will. Whereas in the private sector, it's a little bit more open, and that's really it that sort of fits the industry.
And the types of drugs we're talking about?
Well, commonly they've been referred to as the NIDA, which is the National Institute on Drug Abuse. Those would be the first federal program. We're talking about cocaine, marijuana, amphetamines, opiates within a certain class, and then phencyclidine or PCP.
Well, it's kind of a common agreement that, many of the drugs like cocaine, PCP, heroin, well, we know that they're bad, but however times have changed, and culturally there are those who say, well, some of drug use is more accepted today in today's society. Well, having said this, how is this change impacting the drug-free workplace?
I think it's making it a little bit harder to get employee buy-in. You're telling employees they cannot do these drugs, they're bad for the workplace, but then you're seeing advertisements on TV or state after state legalizing marijuana, if not for medical purposes, for recreational purposes, which does change people's views of the world. But at the end of the day, you're the employer, you make the rules, you set the rules, and you need to educate your employees of the problems with it, the problems in the workplace, and the things we're going to do to not have the drugs exist in the workplace.
And if they do exist?
And if the drugs exist, then that's where your policy needs to have some teeth. I mean, every policy needs to set the parameters of your expectations of your employees and then set the consequences for failures. Now, not every failure needs to be a termination of employment. Actually, I like an employer that is willing to work with employees, get them into a program, give them a second chance, and move forward and try to help the employee instead of just terminate. Right. But there are some situations where you may, depending on the circumstances, move straight to terminate.
Neil, you've When you compare alcohol and marijuana in terms of being in somebody's system, how long does the THC stay in someone's system compared to alcohol?
Well, contrary to popular belief that it stays in there for months and months, you're really looking at a couple of weeks at best, even if a person was a heavy chronic marijuana user.
So it would stay in the system even if somebody just happened to use one time for a couple of weeks?
No, one time, if they used one time, it's probably 2 to 4 days. If they're smoking a joint, several times a week or multiple, then you could probably go out 2 to 3 weeks, a month at the most outside.
So it's somewhat difficult to tell when someone actually had started or when they stopped smoking it.
Well, it's hard to determine some of that, but we do a lot of analysis where we look at to see if the levels are continuing to drop. This is more important in patients that are in drug rehab programs, so that we can say, well, they were a very heavy user prior to coming into treatment, but now 2 weeks later we can see that the levels are continuing to drop, and so there's no evidence of new additional use.
What about the attitude that what I do on my own time is my own business?
Well, that's a very common attitude, and it applies to a lot of things, but normally that's got to be lawful activity. And people say, well, in some states, certain drugs are lawful and certain are not lawful. But the good news for employers, I guess, is under federal law.
So there is case law to support this?
Oh, there's a recent case that came out, I think, in Colorado, where an employee was out on their own time smoking marijuana. The employer tested the employee and terminated the employee because they tested positive for marijuana. And the employee challenged it and said, no, there's an off-duty protection law. What I do in my own time is my own time. You can't terminate me. But that law required lawful off-duty actions, and the smoking marijuana under federal law was unlawful. So the court supported the employer's decision to terminate the employee.
Interesting you mentioned Colorado, because recently several states have approved the use of marijuana for medical purposes, and a few states have even approved recreational use of marijuana. Companies in those states are trying to keep up with the changing laws and attitudes while at the same time protect their business interests. Well, we recently visited Colorado Springs, Colorado, where we learned the environment is certainly evolving.
Colorado, a state filled with natural beauty, is dealing with evolving attitudes about a natural substance. Voters there approved both medical marijuana and legalization for recreational adult use.
What I see personally is that we are now having much more accepting and tolerant attitudes toward drug abuse, toward alcohol abuse. And one thing that I see in the workplace is that the attitude can be, you can't tell me what to do on my time. That's none of your business. As long as I'm not using it in the workplace, then you don't have the right to delve into my personal life.
Yet they do have a right, according to the legislation on the books.
We still have laws in place protecting the employers, and even the amendment that recently passed legalizing recreational use still has a strong employer statement where it's not tolerated in the workplace, not allowable in the workplace.
Local governments control retail sales, grows, manufacturing, and distribution, but keeping marijuana out of the workplace is up to employers.
The employer has rights too. He doesn't have to allow everything. You can have a dress code in your workplace. If you can have a dress code, surely you can have a drug-free workplace. It's very important that the workplace issue line be a hard and fast line. We can't let that become diluted, because that's one of the last stands we have against illegal drugs, or legal drugs for that matter.
Since the THC in marijuana stays in the body for a long time, there is no way for a drug test to know when a person used.
If they came up positive for marijuana, I don't know if it was on the job that they used it. I don't know if it was the night before, the week before. There's really no way for anyone doing a drug screen to know when they were using that. Zero tolerance at a company means zero tolerance, and we all have to be aware of the risks that we take for people who are on any type of illicit substance, even including alcohol. We, of course, wouldn't be employing anybody if they were to come to work drunk. And because we can't test for when they were using marijuana, we have to assume that it was on the job.
It's the risk of having an impaired employee on the job that leads many businesses to drug testing companies like Conspire. Impairment can cause accidents, and accidents lead to higher insurance rates and other issues that can impact the bottom line.
It's always important, no matter what. But in a company like this, you have to understand that in order for us to get work, we have to bid work. In order to bid work, you have to have a good safety record. Almost everyone is tested, even some of our management personnel. A lot of times it's client specific. If we work for a general contractor and that general contractor wants 100%, then we do that.
Businesses that use staffing companies like Corporate Resource Services to find employees are often looking for people who have a strong work history, their own transportation, and can pass a background check and drug screen.
There are a lot of people who are unemployed here in our area, Colorado Springs, but when it comes to those requirements, it's very difficult to find people who meet all of those requirements. I see it hindering people getting jobs right now. I see that they're choosing their personal life over the ability for them to gain employment.
A medical marijuana card doesn't mean a free pass.
It does seem there's a disconnect with the employee understanding that. And we have seen that as well with medical. So we'll have folks who come in and they'll bring their red card and present that as if it were their prescription that verifies that they're okay to use. And the red card is not a prescriptive card. It is simply, this is something that if you have law enforcement cannot prosecute you as long as you're within the bounds of the law. It doesn't have anything to do with workplace use. So there is a misunderstanding there.
There's no misunderstanding on the part of some business owners.
As far as medical marijuana goes, a positive test is a positive test, and really there is no discrepancies or differences that we employers take in this state just because somebody may be using or not using medical marijuana. It's treated the same. We feel like in our business, we're working on typically our customer's second biggest asset that they own, which is their vehicle. And we take it very seriously, and we feel like if one of our employees might be under the influence or even feeling the remaining effects of being under the influence of drugs from previous days or the night before, wherever it might be, that it could impair their ability to keep a customer's car safe and reliable on the road. So we do support that drug-free workplace for that reason.
Berwick Electric Company advertises the fact they have a drug-free workplace, thinking it helps more than just profits.
A drug-free workplace goes a long way with the community. A person can use drugs, but whenever they hire somebody to come into their house and do some work for them, they don't want them to use drugs. When they do want people to come into their homes, they want somebody they can depend on, and they'll do the job well, they'll do the job right, and act professionally in doing it.
Well, there's no question legalized marijuana for personal use certainly creates confusion on many levels. Neil and John, what are your thoughts about what you've just heard, what you've just seen?
Well, it's interesting. Amendment 64, which is the Colorado legislation that approved, legalized or recreational use of marijuana, has an interesting component in it in that it allows for blood testing. And blood is probably the best medium to determine if a person is intoxicated with any kind of drug, but particularly marijuana and alcohol. Most of the testing in the United States is done by urine or oral fluid testing. Very little is done by blood. So their criteria does give them some ability to say, well, even if this was off the use, we can show that you were impaired or you were under the influence while you're on the job now, even if you used it at home last night.
Right. John?
Look, they said it on there. This is a really evolving area of the law, and it's difficult for employers because, in Colorado right now, if someone tests positive, you can kind of make the assumption they were under the influence at work and we can terminate the employment because they were under the influence of the illegal drug, at least illegal under federal law. So they're protected in that regard. But other states kind of might take a little different view of that world. So were you under the influence in the workplace? Well, I think plaintiffs' lawyers and employment lawyers on the plaintiff side are going to be challenging. I wasn't under the influence, quote unquote, in the workplace, which is what most of these laws focus on. And then therefore they will challenge that. I know there's at least a couple states that have made it clear that you can't just assume that if they tested positive, they were under the influence in the workplace. You have to show other evidence that it was in the workplace. So be careful. Look at your state's law and understand how that law impacts what you do.
Neil, when it comes to testing, does it just test to see if somebody has inhaled something, or can it see if somebody has ingested a particular drug?
Well, these tests are really designed what we call the cutoff, or what determines a negative test from a positive test, are really designed to look at active recent use. So if you're at a baseball game or a football game or some other activity, concert where there may be a lot of marijuana being used, and there's certainly some potential for passive exposure, that exposure will produce levels that are so low as to not even approach a positive test result. So it's some safety in there as well.
Right. There was talk about in this particular piece about medical marijuana. Is it covered under the Americans with Disabilities Act?
Medical marijuana is not covered under the Americans with Disabilities Act. It is an illegal drug under federal law. That is a federal statute. So if an employee tests positive for marijuana, that is not covered under the Americans with Disabilities Act. Illegal drugs are not covered under the Act. That's why I had said earlier there's a difference between alcohol and illegal drugs. As things exist now, marijuana is still considered an illegal drug under the Act.
So as you've said, if somebody tests positive for THC and is using medical marijuana, they are not covered.
No, in fact, almost every state's law it makes a point to say that there's no obligation to accommodate an employee for medical marijuana use in the workplace, whereas things that are covered by the Americans with Disabilities Act would require such an accommodation. And the other side, those laws also don't necessarily protect the employment of somebody who tests positive. So while it's legal to use it, there's not a lot of protection in the workplace. But as I said, this is an evolving area, and I think the courts are ultimately going to determine how we interpret some of these laws.
What about the notion that in terms of what matters and what is important today, people are choosing their personal lives. They're going to do whatever they want to do when they want to do it.
I don't think you can stop people from doing that. It's a conscious decision.
There's no faucet you can turn off.
No, it's very difficult, for that to happen along those lines. So if they choose to use drugs, and that's certainly their personal choice, they just need to be aware there are some potential ramifications from that drug use.
We've kind of talked about alcohol and marijuana, but what about prescription drugs? How do those work with a company's drug policy?
That's a very interesting question, because right now that is, besides medical or legalized marijuana, prescription drug use and abuse is the #1 challenge in the United States. Now, the federal drug testing program, including Department of Transportation, does not currently test for most of the prescription drugs, such as oxycodone, hydrocodone, oxymorphone.
Is there not tests developed for that?
Oh, there are certainly tests developed for it, and what you'll find in the private sector is that most of those companies do test for prescription drugs. The federal drug testing program is evolving and has proposed incorporating those drugs into their drug testing program, in addition to expanding from urine testing to also add oral fluid testing.
Are there legal issues with this, John?
There are legal issues, because now you're talking about people that might be legally taking a drug under a prescription for their job. I mean, to deal with their injury, whatever it might be. So now they're at the job and they're taking these drugs that could cause a problem with their work. So there's a lot of levels of issues. So on the one side, if you're illegally taking prescription drug, so either you don't have the prescription or you're taking it against what the prescription says, then that's an illegal use of the drug and it's not protected under the Americans with Disabilities Act. But if you're taking the drug to deal with what would otherwise be defined as a disability under the Act, then you might have a right to an accommodation. The employer might want to say to you, A, is there a way that you can change your medication or rework your medication so that you're still able to perform your job if it's a safety sensitive position and the drug would otherwise cause a problem there? Because
there could be side effects that...
There could be many side effects, or actually the actual effects of the drug that would make it difficult if you were in a safety-sensitive position. So you might say, is there a way we can rework your drugs, or what drugs you take, or when you take them, so that you can perform your job? Or the EEOC, the U.S. Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, has made it very clear that leave could be a reasonable accommodation. Go take your time off. You're going to take your medication. You'll be better. You'll be back at work in a month or 2 months or whatever works. And if you're subject to that act, that might be something else that you need to consider. And real quick, I think this is an area where the medical review officer could be very important.
It plays a critical role.
Oh, I can imagine. Neil, has Dacia researched what happens when companies start up a drug-free workplace program and then begin the testing? Or is there research available for that?
Yes, there is. We actually, 2 years ago, ran a very large study with the Society of Human Resource Management program looking at drug testing in the workplace.
And this encompassed how many businesses? Or?
Several thousand.
Okay.
Randomly selected, so they went from
Different
very
sizes.
larges to very small, companies. Not everybody does drug testing. There are a lot of different reasons for that out there, but there are certainly benefits, and I think you heard earlier that there's increased productivity, from the workers, decreased accident rates, which lowers your workers' compensation fees. Morale is certainly very critical. So I'm not working side by side with somebody who's high on drugs.
Right, protecting their safety. But
Yes.
what about the notion that if a company did test, they wouldn't be able to find enough workers?
Some companies do complain. You sort of have to look at what are the quality of workers you're hiring in the first place. I mean, if you're used to recruiting from a population that enjoys recreational drug use, illicit, then you probably are going to have a problem hiring people if you implement a drug-free workplace program.
Okay. Well, we're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we'll continue our discussion and talk specifically about how to implement a drug-free workplace in this changing environment.
You may not know where to turn when you're struggling with a drug or alcohol problem. It can be completely overwhelming. Even if you are not the one who's using. If you're a parent looking for help, look to the partnership at drugfree.org. You're not alone.
When Noah's mom brought him to drug rehab, she never thought he'd end up back here again. The story of addiction is all too familiar, but you can change it.
I hope it helped. See you guys next week.
Ready for lunch, Noah?
Yeah, Mom.
If you or someone you know is recovering from addiction, share your story with the partnership at drugfree.org, because your story can change someone else's.
Welcome back to our program, The Evolving Drug-Free Workplace. I'm joined by Neil Fourtner and John Romeo, and we have talked about the benefits of a drug-free workplace, but how do you get to that point? John, let's go back a bit. Why do some companies test and others don't?
We mentioned it briefly earlier, but really there have been countless studies that all come out on the positive side of a drug-free workplace. Employee morale comes up significantly. Absenteeism goes down. Productivity comes up. Those are all important things. But on the other side, kind of on the legal side, you can maintain your risk, okay? Your workers' comp insurance premiums could go down. Your workers' comp incidents could go down. Liability for the company could go down. Anytime there's a car accident that has, alcohol or drugs related to it, that's going to have a significant impact on the business, let alone your reputation. I mean, that's probably the most important thing here.
Right.
If there's a drug-related issue at your workplace, that can't do anything good for your reputation as a business. So all these things add up together, that you reduce risk, you increase productivity, you increase employee morale. I mean, all of these things make it important for a company to create a culture of a drug-free workplace.
So there's the upside. What is the downside? What does testing cost?
Testing's not as exorbitant and expensive as people would think. You're somewhere between $20 to $40 to do a drug test.
And some people might think, well, it's just easier for me to keep a hold of my employee and forget about the test.
Well, there's certainly some thoughts behind that, because replacing an employee, when you look at the recruiting costs, the retraining costs, I mean, you're looking at thousands and thousands of dollars to do that.
The return on investment?
The return on investment would be very high to, retain those employees, but you also have to, weigh that against the other components that John's talking about. Am I going to have, decreased morale? Even though I don't want to let go of this employee, Do the other employees want to be working side by side with someone who has lower productivity, so they have to pick up their slack? Do I have to worry about them being more accident prone, higher absentee? Because if they're not there, they're not helping the company.
So the question is, why do some companies choose not to test?
That was a very interesting
million-dollar question?
That's $1 million question. We ran our survey, and there were a number of companies that came back and says, do you test? No, we don't. And so we asked, why don't you test? Some of them thought it was too expensive. But if you're looking at $20 to $40, that doesn't seem exorbitant price, but they thought it was expensive. Some of them thought they didn't have a good return on investment. The amount of money they spend to do their drug testing program didn't, really help the bottom line that much. And surprisingly, there were some companies that said, we just don't believe in it. That's from a corporate, or management philosophy that says, if it's not hurting them, then let them do, keep my employees happy, let them do their drugs.
Wow. Well, let's turn over a moment and talk about implementation. If a business already exists, how does it begin a drug-free workplace program? How does it get started? Is it too late?
Well, it's certainly not too late, but I think this kind of dovetails what Neil was just saying about, some of the problems employers have bringing one together. A lot of times you sit back and you look at, we don't have one. What are our resources to put one together? Do we have a full-scale HR team? Do we have a medical review officer? Do we have the time, the funds, and the employees to dedicate to this when we still have a day job?
Right, because you're talking about time. We have so many things to get done, and now we have this to do.
Yeah, our list is piling up already, and now we're going to put this on top of it. And it's not just for the employees getting tested. There's people that need to implement this process. They need to put it together. They need to train on it. So this all dovetails into one of the reasons why I think employers struggle, just saying, it's too hard to move forward. But no, to answer your question, if you don't have one, it's not too late. It's never too late to put a policy in. And I would recommend to most clients that have the resource to do it, that makes sense to do it, to put it in. It's better for your workplace in the long run.
Has the framework already been created? I mean, is everything there, the outline, the necessary elements to start a drug-free workplace?
Oh yes, I think an employer could put together a drug-free workplace program very inexpensively. I mean, there's policies that are put together, there's programs that are put together on the training and the awareness, and the drug testing is really standardized to a point where you can implement that into your policy very quickly and very easily.
So the policy, you have all the elements. What is the first step? What do you need to do?
Well, depending on the size of your organization, you could do an analysis of the organization. Where are our risk areas? What are our risk areas? And build that into a more complex policy. If you have the resources to do that, I would recommend doing that, a case assessment of your company, of your employees. Where do we want to go? But if you want to go kind of on the more standardized track, there are resources available to employers to put together the basics. The basics are a written policy. Again, this is not a gotcha mentality. We're trying to train and educate. So put it in the policy. Put everything you need to put in the policy to help the employees understand what they need to know. Then you want to have training for your employees, education for the employees so they understand what's at risk and what the issues are. You want to train your supervisors on the same things you're training your employees on, but then above and beyond that, make them aware of the policy and how to deal with the policy and how to recognize issues in the workplace. I think it's good to have it dovetailed into an EAP program, an employee assistance program, where if an issue does come up, there's an avenue for employees to get help and to recover and to get back into the workplace. I think that would be good. And if you have the opportunity, a medical review officer, and that's a person that would receive the results from the drug test before it makes its way back to the company to deal with any potential false positives or things like that.
I could see this for a large corporation, but for a small business that has not enough people to get everything done that they need to get done, this is just another task on their shoulders that they have to implement.
Well, you're absolutely right, and that can be overwhelming for a small mom and pop. I mean, there are a lot of mom and pop companies that are covered under Department of Transportation, so they are mandated to test their people. Now, when you only have 4 employees, it's a little hard to say I'm going to run a random test. So what has evolved out of this is an entity called third-party administrators, or TPAs. These are actually companies that will come in to these smaller ones and say, you need to have a drug-free workplace program, or you would like to have a drug-free workplace program. We can do everything for you. We can set this up. We can cover your policies. We can literally soup to nuts. testing's only one small component of a drug-free workplace.
I would imagine that that's got to be a pretty heavy, you could really heavily sell this, because a mom and pop organization is going to think, well, here we go, here's another entity that's going to be taking more money from me out of the bottom line.
Yeah, but I like to liken it to the electrician that we saw in the video earlier that said, look, I can't send one of my employees into somebody's house on drugs.
Sure.
And I think
it's a sales point, isn't it?
If you have that respect for your company, and if you have that concern for your company and your employees, then it's worth doing. Because you can't have your employees out there in the public, whether it's in a safety-sensitive position or interacting with the public while using drugs. I think it's worth it, whether you're mom or pop or whether you're a larger company.
What about a company that has a manager or people who do not interact with the public?
Well, I think that brings us back to some of Neil's risk points, where people say, look, this is the pool of people we employ with.
Okay.
We pay people $8 an hour. This is who we're getting. It's going to be really difficult. And then you've got to make a decision based upon your risk analysis of your company.
All right, so you said the first thing is we've got to have a written policy.
I think the first thing is to have a written
Okay.
policy that you then disseminate to the employees, make sure they all get it.
And that's mentioning specific drugs.
I would include the drugs that are banned in your workplace, drug-free workplace policy, right into the policy.
Okay.
Put them right in there for employees to see.
What if other drugs down the road become available? We're talking about marijuana now, alcohol. What if something else is just around the corner?
Well, in all the years I've been in this field, it's never been boring, because no sooner do you turn the corner and say, well, we have this drug under control, we can test for it now, that somebody develops a new drug. The designer drugs, the new stuff that comes on the market is always a challenge. And I will tell you that the drug testing industry has a tendency to lag behind that particular issue. But the policies need to be written such that you always have the ability to say, okay, here's the drug panel we're going to test for, but we're not going to limit it to these. As new drugs become available or become an issue of abuse, we may expand that.
So is that included within the overall scope of the written policy?
This is kind of policy writing 101 for a company. That this policy doesn't create a contract between you and the company, and this policy can be amended or changed at any time by the company at the sole discretion of the company. So you put that in your policy, and then if you want to make those changes, you have the right to make them, and then you publish them and teach everybody what the changes you made to the policy.
Now, you just mentioned publish them and teach them. How do you go about that? Do you have to post them in certain places? Do they get mailed to the employee? How does that happen? By
a variety of mechanisms. It sort of depends on the size of the company and how much resources they can invest. Right. For instance, when these federal programs rolled out in the late 1980s, nobody was doing testing. So there was a lot of employee education. There was mandated training for managers and supervisors in terms of recognizing drug use signs and symptoms. If you're starting a brand new program, there's probably a grace period. We're going to give you, 3 months, 6 months. During that time period, there normally is an ability that if you think you have a drug problem, come forward now, and we'll deal with it, get you into assistance program along those lines, as opposed to we're going to just fire you automatically.
During a probationary period.
Right, during a probationary period. There's ability, time for them to come forward and say, I have a drug problem or alcohol problem.
What about a business owner that we have got a policy and we've got it installed, however, the laws in that state might change and make a certain drug legal? Where do we go from there?
Again, very consistent with before, you need to reserve for yourself the right to amend or change the policy. Put in very clear statements that say this policy is intended to comply with laws, federal, state, and local laws. But then you need to be...
But a state law may not go along with federal law. Is that possible?
Right. A state law may not go along with federal law. And you want to make it clear in your policy, and this kind of comes up in the whole medical marijuana issue. You want to make it clear in your policy that you need to comply with local, state, and federal law. And therefore, you may not, for example, in Colorado, be in violation of state law for something, but you're still in violation of federal law. And you can enforce that federal law violation in your drug-free workplace policy. So you want to have that, and you want to reserve the right to change that, amend that. And it's hard right now because everything's changing so fast. You need to have your counsel review your policies, and you need to have them review it on that state-specific event, because it's so different in every state. It can really impact whether or not your policy is accurate and compliant with law.
Okay, so my company, I've just started a new drug enforcement policy. What kind of training do I need to give my supervisors and my employees? Where do we start?
Well, I think the first thing you need to educate the employees, educate everyone in terms of why are we doing this? Why is the company rolling this out? You know, there are a lot of statistics to go back and support, you know, the benefits of drug testing. They need to understand that this is not a punitive program. It's really designed to be a deterrent program. And hopefully your program has a component in it where people can get help if they need it along those programs. And then you need to educate them about the entire process. Here's, you know, the testing process. Here are the things that are going to go into having a sample collected. Here's, if we run a random program, how do I know that my name was chosen really randomly, as opposed to I just put all your names in a hat and pulled them out? Well, you sort of random, you know, along those lines. But employee protection is very critical in all of these. And as is the training of the supervisors and managers. They're not going to be able to say, you know, I can prove that you're under the influence. They're just looking for signs and symptoms that may warrant further evaluation and maybe further testing.
How do you get an employee to buy into this program?
That's sometimes difficult.
That's another $1 million question.
Yeah, it's another $1 million question. You know, they've got to go along with the company philosophy, because at the end of the day, if they choose my personal life and choices are more important than my job, then that's the choice they're going to have to make, and there are going to be some consequences, unfortunately, to that.
There are going to be some employees that buy in right away. They support it, and it's the way they live their life, and it's the way they want the company to live life at the company. And there's other employees that don't live their life that way and don't buy in, and you're never going to really strike a balance between that dichotomy because people have such a different basis. But you need to educate people that this is the way we're doing it at this company. And again, one way that I think you always get buy-in is it's from the top down. I don't think you should just limit testing to those people that are mandated to be tested, because what kind of example are you setting for those employees that you're trying to get buy-in from?
So you would do it from the top down. There's not certain levels that you begin in.
I'm a believer in that in every aspect of the business. If you were going to say this is the way this business is going to work, then that's the way the business should work. And if you're going to have a double standard, then I think you're going to have a hard time getting buy-in from your employees.
What does reasonable suspicion or reasonable cause mean for a test?
This is what Neil was just talking about earlier, where you've got supervisors in the field that are going to be seeing how an employee is behaving. And if they see something that's...
Or an employee seeing a supervisor.
Or an employee seeing a supervisor. And I will say in fairness, it more often goes the other way, but it shouldn't be one way. It should go both ways. And a lot of times this program, by the way, will be in conjunction with a more broad employee ethics program where you could call into an 800 number or something, or go see HR and say, I've seen this potential problem. So that makes it easier for an employee to report a supervisor. But you need to train your supervisors. Supervisors aren't trained on what to look for. So you need to teach them, these are the things we're looking for. Are we having absentee issues? Are we having employees not getting along with our other employees, or you know, avoiding other employees or situations like they didn't before?
Is there a checklist of things to look for? You mentioned the absenteeism.
That's what I was going to say. I believe you should have a checklist for your employees, and it should be twofold. There should be a checklist of the things you're looking for, objective criteria, red eyes, slurred speech, things like that. And then there should be a little place for comments about exactly what you saw. But you need to really train your employees when doing this documentation. Do not ad lib. Don't add your own personal thoughts. Don't add any comments just for the sake of adding comments. Keep it systemic, keep it fair, keep it strictly to the facts. The facts are nothing but the facts. Because when you start adding things in, that could create some legal issues for you down the road.
Should it be limited to what you see visually?
As opposed to...
Well, what you might be able to smell, the breath of someone.
Oh, absolutely. No, that's part of the common sense. If I'm smelling alcohol in your breath,
I realize that.
I'm going to put that down on the form saying, look, you know, I smell alcohol in the breath, and you put that right down there. And you check, that's going to be one of the boxes. I didn't know if you meant maybe as opposed to like absenteeism being increased or things like that.
What about changes in attitude? That's somewhat difficult to notice. Might be able to see it over time, but...
And this is where I think employers run a risk of running afoul of other federal employment laws. So Title VII that protects you based on race or gender or things like, or age, under the Age Discrimination in Employment Act. So, and a supervisor has to be trained to treat everybody fairly and treat everybody the same. So if you're going to see a change in attitude, you have to really write down what the attitude was and what the change was. Because when you allow things like that that are more subjective to come in, you give a supervisor the opportunity to treat person A differently than person B, and then even though you might have made a good decision under your drug-free workplace policy, you might be getting yourself into trouble under some other policies.
Right, exactly. So you have to do a lot of documentation. Many companies do the random testing? You mentioned about pulling a name out of a hat. Is there some sort of system that's set up that under the drug-free workplace that tells you when, how, and so forth to go about?
Well, the federal testing program has requirements that 50% of that covered group has to be tested on an annual basis. Ideally,
and that can happen
randomly.
on
right,
the
and it happens randomly. And there are actually programs that are, random number generators that are commonly used now to select who's been tested. Many of the private sector don't do random testing. It's very rare, I would say, more than common to see random testing in the private sector.
But if you happen to have a problem employee, can you do a random test?
With a problem employee, and
yes.
one would question whether or not it was random at the end of the day. But no question that I think in the private sector, they stray from random testing. You wouldn't want to just implement it because you had a problem employee, because the random in and of itself needs to be a program that's over a period of time where you're randomly pulling names out. If you had a problem employee, that would fall under the reasonable suspicion test based on the problems. I find most private employers that are not subject to the Department of Transportation rules or the DOD rules or other federal rules that require testing do not do random testing, because state by state there's a lot of very specific rules. With respect to alcohol, it falls under the Americans with Disabilities Act, so you might have to have different rules and programs in place. But at a minimum, random testing has to be, in my opinion, you correct me if I'm wrong, Neil, a safety sensitive position and perhaps some other reason for having a reason to put in the random program. But like we've had a history of drug use. We've been doing surveillance, we've seen drug use on site, we're going to start doing random testing.
What kinds of tests are we talking about? Are we talking about blood, urine, inhaling?
Almost all of the tests done in the country today are urine tests.
Almost all?
Almost all. Because it's a relatively invasive sample to collect. It gives you, some good information within a certain period of days of when the drug use may have occurred. It is subject to other problems such as substitution or adulteration. So there's been an involvement into some other samples such as oral fluid, where you don't have to go to a special collection facility. You can take a thing that looks like a giant Q-tip, put it in your mouth for a couple of minutes, and then that gets sent to a laboratory, or sometimes some of them do on-site testing where you can get an instant test right away. Less common is hair testing, but it is used within certain industries because while it can't detect occasional recreational use, it is excellent for detecting chronic drug use. Past use. And typically you can go back at least 90 days, depending on the length of the hair.
But blood sampling?
Blood sampling is rarely done for drugs. There are some programs that are working on what's called driving under the influence, which is analogous to the alcohol statutes that have been developed out there. Of the blood testing that's done, it's almost all limited to alcohol testing.
Is there a move afoot to make this standardized around the country, or is it already?
Well, alcohol testing is pretty standardized.
Okay.
You got that. Standardizing the driving under the influence of other drugs, I think it's too early to standardize that. There are some states that are working on that and sort of following each other. But in terms of a national standardization, if it happens, it's years down the road.
So there's no one blueprint to follow?
That's correct.
Okay, at this time.
The companies do have the option to follow what the Department of Transportation regulations have as far as the process. Maybe the different drugs that you might test, but the process for doing it is set forth. Is that the SAMHSA guidelines? Is that what they are?
Yeah, so under the SAMHSA is the Substance Abuse Mental Health Services Administration, which is the agency under the Department of Health and Human Services that is charged with overseeing the federally mandated drug testing program.
So how is the test done? Is there a kit? Is there something that's handed to an individual?
It's interesting. If it's urine, and let's just use that because it's the most common sample, the employee comes in, they have to present proper identification to ensure that I'm really testing, who I think I'm testing.
Right.
They will go into an area where they'll wash their hands. They will not be permitted to take bags or, coats, large things into the collection area with them. These are, by and large, not observed tests. So there isn't somebody standing there watching the sample being voided. What they've put in place is they'll go into an area where there's no running water, where there's probably a toilet, and that toilet has dye in the toilet, in the water, to prevent someone from adding water from the toilet into their urine sample. They'll collect the sample, they'll take it back out to the collector. Within 4 minutes, they'll read the temperature of the specimen to ensure that it really did come from the body.
So it's just a third party that is involved here? It's not somebody from the business, or?
I advise all my clients to use a third party for the testing. You're in the business of doing what you're in the business of doing. Unless that business is drug testing, I would use a third party to do the drug testing.
So the third party's involved to collect this, and
Third party collects it. Usually in a lot of companies today, they take that original container. In the presence of the donor, they pour it into 2 separate bottles. They seal those in front of the donor signs those. And this is what's called bottle A and bottle B. So both bottles will go to a testing laboratory. The laboratory will test bottle A. If it's positive, the donor has the ability to take bottle B, which has not been opened, and send it to another lab as a referee test.
I see.
All of this then usually goes to a medical review officer.
So there's quite a number of steps to go through.
A lot of safeguards to
Now,
protect the employee.
we have a positive test for some sort of substance. What are the consequences?
Well, again, we talked earlier about, I think both Neil and I are on board with kind of a rehabilitation type of program. Give somebody a chance, get them into a program, give them a chance to succeed.
First time, second time, third time? How
First
far?
time. Some laws in some states have like 3 times the charm rules. You're out at the third time. I'm a believer in first time, and then you bring the person back on a last chance agreement, what I call it, an agreement where the person says, I tested positive. You gave me this opportunity to better myself, to improve my situation. You brought me back to work. Normally there's a test when you come back to work too, to make sure you're clean before you come back. And then you come back to work, and then you're living under a program. Now, you might build into that agreement with the employee a random test that you don't otherwise have. Over the next 2 years, we will test you, 4 times.
So it's usually if somebody is found positive, and now they've tested positive, so here's strike number 1.
Right.
Okay. Are they taken off of the payroll? What other kinds of consequences go along with this?
Yeah, what you would do is actually, if it's say a reasonable suspicion test, what you should do is after the test is done, send the person home. In my opinion, with pay. Some companies will do it without pay until the test results come back.
But remove them from the
remove them from the workforce. If it comes back negative, fine, they reintegrate right into the workplace. If it comes back positive, then you have to figure out how you're going to bring the person back. Are you going to discipline them? Are they going to get terminated on the spot? Are they going to go through a rehab program where then they come back thereafter, pursuant to some agreement with the employer? And you also have to take into account whether it's a unionized employee or not. That can have a big impact on the consequences that you're allowed to take because you might have negotiated a program in or a plan in.
Because there's more people enmeshed into this whole thing.
Right, and the union will negotiate. You can't just, if you don't have a program already, we talked about putting one in now, is it too late? Well, if you're putting in one now and you have a unionized workforce, the union's going to want to have a say in that program, and more importantly, the consequences for a violation. A lot of unions will try to negotiate in some sort of a second chance, third chance situation for their employees, and they will challenge you. We see it in Major League Baseball, we see it in the NFL. They'll challenge whether the test was done right or whether it was right. And we see people win. I think Ryan Braun won that a year ago or something, where the answer was they didn't take the test right, so I come back to work. And that's all collectively bargained. That's how that happens. That's how that works.
Right. But consequences should be spelled out within the written policy.
I would spell out all the consequences. These are the things that could happen. And I would leave myself the right for termination. Even if I wasn't dealing with a union and I wasn't negotiating in the program, I would leave myself in the right for termination. And then you can choose kind of on a progressive schedule which thing you're going to choose under the situation, under the circumstances.
What about confidentiality? We have somebody here who's tested positive. Where do we stand with that?
Both legally, under certain federal statutes and a lot of state statutes, and just because it's the right thing to do morally, we try to maintain the confidentiality as best we can. It really is the classic on a need-to-know basis. That is why there's so much benefit to the medical review officer. And then once things come back to the employer with a positive test, it should only go to the decision maker, maybe an HR person for support, and then they get the information, and then it needs to be stored in a separate file. It can't be in your personnel file. It has to be in a separate medical file for the employee, so there's no interaction between the two. So if somebody's just going in to check out something like when you started working, they're not seeing your drug test in that file.
Okay. Do most employers know their rights in all of this?
I think most employers know that they have the right to do this. I don't think they understand the extent of what their rights are, what they can or can't do. I was impressed with the employers on that tape in Colorado. They were saying, look, this is our right. We can set a dress code. We can set a drug-free workplace. This is what we're going to do. I think some employers run a little bit more scared of this because the whole testing seems like a little bit more of a encroaching into someone's privacy rights, you know, and I think some employers shy away from that a little bit.
Well, does an employer have any recourse with an employee who tests positive?
Does an employer have any recourse?
Right. If he suspects that an employee has been using drugs and there isn't a drug-free work policy.
Oh, okay, I understand. You're going to have to check out your state laws because some states will require a written policy. But yes,
for every business, depending on size?
For every business. If you're going to drug test, I'm sorry, some will require a policy saying you need to do so. But I would submit that if you didn't have a policy, you're still going to have work rules. There's still work rules that exist. And if somebody comes to work under the influence and you have any evidence that they're under the influence, you could still take action. Now, it's more suspect to challenge. You're going to have a greater likelihood that the employee may challenge that and succeed on any number of grounds, whether it be state or federal law. But I think you have your work rules. Even if you don't have a full-fledged policy, you're probably going to have a rule that says you can't come to work under the influence of drugs or alcohol.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
That rule alone would probably be enough to terminate somebody if you could establish they were under the influence of drugs or alcohol.
So, Neil, how should companies tackle the changing attitudes towards drugs?
Well, another $1 million question. I think, you know, as John said, you've got to have a written policy. It's got to be such that it doesn't, you know, paint you into a corner, that you could never alter that drug testing policy, whether it's adding new drugs or saying, okay, now we have legalized marijuana. How does our company interpret those rules? How are we going to handle that? It's an ongoing battle. It never changes. So, you know, the employers have to themselves be continually educated in terms of here's, you know, the newest drugs that are coming out. Here's what you need to consider testing for.
Wow. Well, gentlemen, thank you.
Thank you.
Because it seems as if we've only scratched the surface discussing the evolving drug-free workplace. But we are out of time, and before we go, we're going to leave you with some internet resources that you might find helpful. On behalf of Neil Fourtner and John Romeo, I'm Stan Rhodes. Thanks for watching The Evolving Drug-Free Workplace.